I want to show you how to do a few problems on your green worksheet just to remind you since we are having an e-learning day. So if you open up to the green worksheet that says review 6.4 to 6.5, I'm going to do a few problems with you and I'm going to set up a couple that you can finish on your own. So if we look at number 2, we're going to make the x. Remember, all of the problems on this worksheet, you're going to start by making the x. And at the top of the x, we put a times c, and at the bottom of the x, we put b. Remember that a is the number in front of the squared variable, so if you don't see it, it's a 1. So in problem number 2, a is 1, b is -8, and c is -20. If you multiply a times c, you get -20. Your b is that middle number, which is -8. Remember, you have to come up with numbers that multiply to -20 but add to -8. If you need to, refer to the gold sheet that I handed out during class, which I will also have posted in the module. The numbers that multiply to -20 and add to -8 are going to be a -10 and a +2. Remember Mrs. Berry's sign trick that if the top number is negative, the other numbers should not share a sign, right? They should not smile. All right, so these numbers are supposed to be put now in parentheses with an n. So we will put in n minus 10 and n plus 2. Now this is not a problem that needs to divide, reduce, and move because a is 1. And if you divide by 1, it doesn't change anything anyway. So the divide and reduce and move steps are only required if that first number in front of your squared variable is something bigger than 1. So for this problem, we're actually done. Now I want to do problem number 2 with you because this is the first time that we have not seen a c in our problem. So when we go to make the x and we're trying to do a times c at the top, there is actually no constant. Remember, c is that constant on the end that doesn't have a variable, and there isn't one. So we're going to put +0, because if it's missing, it must have been +0. Our a is missing, but it is an invisible one. So our a times c is going to be 1 times 0, which is just 0. Our middle number, which is our b, is -4. If you think about numbers that multiply to 0, one of them must be 0. This is not the type of thing you'd be able to find on your gold chart. When numbers multiply to 0, one of them 0, that is not something covered on the gold chart. So anytime the top number is 0, make sure to make one of your side numbers 0. And so we just have to fill in the other side number with a -4. Because 0 times -4 makes 0. 0 plus -4 makes that b at the bottom. Now, you can put this in parentheses. It would be k plus 0 and k minus 4. And if you put that in as your answer, I will give you full credit. But what a multiple choice test would show is that anytime we write +0, it really doesn't matter. We only wrote it at the beginning so we could fill in our x. But it really doesn't matter in the final answer. So anytime we write +0 in a final answer, it kind of isn't really necessary. So if we take it out, the +0 part, we're left with just k. And if you think about it, yeah, I know it's in parentheses. It's going to be next to k minus 4. But anytime we have a single in parentheses next to another parenthesis, we really don't need those parentheses. So again, on a multiple choice test, the way it would look is k times the quantity, k minus 4. We'll talk about this more when we return on Wednesday, but that's how a problem like number 3 should look when there is a c missing. And I'll do another one of those at the end of the notes with you too, or at the end of this green worksheet. All right, if we go down to number 8, and you can see I also have number 10 circled, this is the type of problem that the numbers get really big. And I know on yesterday's or Friday's homework, I got rid of all of the ones that had really big numbers in the x. But I want to show you a way that you could get these done and give you some hints on how to do it. So if we multiply our a times our c, which would be 5 times 64, we would get 320. and our b would be 48. And if you looked on the gold chart, you would not be able to find two numbers that multiply to 320 and add to 48. So a great way to get started is to just look at the 64. Remember, you created the 320 by multiplying 5 times 64. So anything that's a multiple of 64 would also, anything that's a factor of 64 would also be a factor of 320. So if you think about different ways you can make 64, it'd be 1 times 64, it'd be 2 times 32, and hopefully the one that comes to mind that you actually could find on your gold chart is 8 times 8. So if 8 can go into 64, then maybe try putting 8 into 320. Or if 2 can go into 64, maybe try putting 2 into 320. So you can kind of use process of elimination by thinking about all the numbers that can go into 64 and try to divide 320 by that. And again, you need that calculator out. The calculator is going to help you. And so let's just try one that I know is wrong, so don't write this one. But if I put a 2, and remember, you're not dividing 64 by 2, you're dividing 320 by 2. So if you divide 320 by 2, you get 160. Well, 2 and 160 do not make 48. So hopefully at this point you'd realize, well, I need something bigger than 2. So try 8. If you divide 320 by 8, you get 40. So 8 times 320, 8 times 40 makes 320, but 8 plus 40 makes 48. And so you got it. We'll go into, or create a set of parentheses. We'll put x plus 8. We'll put x plus 40. Hopefully we'll remember that that a is not an invisible one. Therefore, we need those 3 extra steps. We divide by 5. We reduce any fractions we can reduce, which would be the second parenthesis. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Remember, divide by the a squared, divide by the a, what's in front of the squared variable. Reduce any fractions and move any remaining denominators. Don't forget these steps. So I divided, I reduced the 40 over 5. Since 8 over 5 cannot be reduced, I simply move it to the front. So I get 5x plus 8. If you did a simple check on this one and did your first part of FOIL and your last part of FOIL, hopefully you'd realize 5 times x is 5x squared, and 8 times 8 gives you that 64. And if you compare that to the original problem, that's exactly what you're seeing. You're seeing a 5x squared in the front, and you're seeing a 64 at the back. So that's a good indication that you probably did it right. All right, let's try another one with big numbers. If we take a times c, which is 3 times your 56, we're going to get 168. At the bottom of the x, we're going to get negative 31. Again, that b is that number in the middle. So again, think about what can go into 56. And hopefully immediately you'd think of 7 times 8. 7 times 8 gives you 56. So try to put 7 into 168 and try to put 8 into 168. And again, I'm going to do it wrong just so we could see what happens, or what the process is. So if I divide 168 by 8, I would get 21. And don't forget, one of them has to be negative. Both of them have to be negative because the top is positive and the bottom's negative. So if I made them both negative, I would get 168, but I would not get negative 31. I'd get negative 29. So I know that's not the right combination. So I'm going to erase that. And instead of trying the 8, I'm going to try the 7. So if we put in negative 7 here, 7 goes into 168 24 times. So again, look at that C and say, well, what numbers can go into 56? If they can go into 56, they're going to be able to go into 168. And so that kind of gets you started. You don't have to kind of just keep guessing and guessing. You can kind of narrow down your guesses. If you don't understand this process, if there's any you get stuck on, just leave them blank and we will do them together when we get back on Wednesday. All right, so for now we're going to put n minus 7 and n minus 24. This does begin with a 3, not an invisible 1, so we're going to divide by 3. This first parenthesis, we're going to move the 3 to the front because 7 cannot be divided by 3. So we get 3n minus 7. The second parenthesis, we get n minus 8 because 24 can be divided by 3. All right. So I just wanted to walk you through a couple where the numbers were sort of big. And I know we didn't do those on Friday, and give you that hint on how to try to get the numbers filled in. All right, I'm going to do one more of the big ones with you. So we have an A of 7, a B of negative 45, and a C of 50 on number 12. If we multiply A times C, 7 times 50, we get 350. Our B is negative 45. To get us started, we think about all the ways we can make a 50, or all the numbers that can go into 50, right? We got 1, we got 2, we got 5, we've got 10. That you can use your gold chart for. You can find different ways to make a 50. So pick one of the ways to make a 50 and just pick one of those numbers. So again, if you pick 25, because 50 can be divided by 25, try to divide 350 by 25. And it's going to go into there 14 times. We're going to need 2 negatives because the top is positive and the bottom's negative. But when we add those, we get negative 39. That doesn't help us to make negative 45. And I'm just trying to show you, what are we actually testing? We're testing any number that can go into 50 to get us started. All right, so now think of other numbers that can go into 50. How about 5? Well, if we put a negative 5 here, we get negative 70 over here. That also doesn't make negative 45. What about 10? 10 can go into 50. So if 10 can go into 50, it could also go into 350. So if I put a negative 10 in here, divide 350 by 10, you get 35. So I have negative 10 and negative 35. That is the correct combination because it multiplies to negative 3 or positive 350 and adds to negative 45. All right, so what we do is put the V minus 10 and the V minus 35 in our parentheses. We divide both of them by 7. We reduce if we can. If we cannot reduce, we move. I cannot reduce 10 over 7, so I move it. 7V minus 10. I can reduce 35 by 7, so V minus 5 on that one. 35 can be divided by 7. All right, I'm going to end the ones I'm going to do with you with number 14. Number 14 is back to the same kind as number 2 that I showed you. If you are missing the C, put a plus 0. Don't forget about invisible ones. So we have an A, a B, and a C in our original problem now, even though originally it didn't look like we had a C. We can always put plus 0. So 1 times 0 is 0. The bottom number is 8. Remember, the only way to multiply to 0 is if one of your numbers is 0, and the other will always become that bottom number because 0 times 8 is 0, but 0 plus 8 is 8. Come to your parentheses, fill them in. R plus 0, R plus 8. I'm fine with this answer. If you box this answer and give it to me on a test, I'll give you full credit. But on a multiple choice test, they're not going to ever write the plus 0 part. They're going to simplify everything and say it's R times the quantity, R plus 8. All right, so I want you to try the rest on your own. Most of these you should be able to do because the gold chart is going to help you. There's only, I think, a few left that fall off of the gold chart. Also, anything like number 16, number 17, you should be able to do because I just walked you through 2 examples. They're just like number 2 and number 14. All right, good luck.